Here we go, here we go, here we go. We are here. Some of us feeling a little bit better than others, but we are here nonetheless. The boys are back. Tev is, despite all sicknesses, he is here in sickness and in health. He joins us. And sickness and in health, man. This is real, man. You know your boys are real. We come through here. So yeah, episode 22. We going. So let's jump straight into it. And I'm going to kick us off today with a fun fact, which is going to be followed up by a question for you, Tev. Okay. So the fun fact of the day is, I was reading, unfortunately I can't pull it up right now, but I was reading about this on, I think I saw it on Twitter, where they have been conducting studies and stuff. And what they said is that, blind people, if you are born blind, it's different if you actually go blind, but if you are born blind, you don't actually see in black, right? So it's not in total darkness that you experience. Like, I think when we all imagine being blind, you imagine seeing utter darkness, like when the lights are off. Exactly. But in actual fact, they've done studies and stuff. Lord knows how they figured this out, but they've done studies and stuff. And instead of seeing black, you see more of like a milky gray kind of color. So they said the closest way to describe it is if you close your right eye, and I hope our listeners are doing this, if you close your right eye, that kind of color that you see there, that is the closest thing to what a person who is born blind, what they see. Like, so that's their experience, right? Their entire time. So I was then also, funny enough, one thing led to another. You know how you go down these internet rabbit holes. And I found this thing where it's like describing a color to a blind person. And I found this really cool thing on Reddit. And the guy basically said he did the research, whatever his name is, and he found these answers so fascinating. So I'm going to read these 3 answers for you. And then, Tev, I want you to have a stab. You can choose any color you want, and you can have a stab at describing these colors for a color for a blind person. Yeah. Okay. So this is how you can describe a color to a blind person. So the color red. They had me stand outside in the sun. They told me that the heat I was feeling is red. They explained that red is the color of a burn from heat, embarrassment, or even anger. That was the first one. I thought it was pretty cool. Ooh. The second one they did was blue. They put my hands in their pool. They told me that sensation I felt while swimming, that omnipresent coolness, that's blue. Blue feels like relaxation. And then green.
Very, very accurate.
Yeah, I think so. And then green, I held soft leaves and wet grass. They told me green felt like life. To this day, it is still very much my favorite color. So those are obviously blind people giving an account of how they experienced these colors, or how these colors were taught to them. So you think you can?
Yeah, there's so well. It's been described so well.
It really is.
The first color that popped into my head was yellow. So I'll try to describe yellow.
Okay.
Yellow is warm, it's radiant, and it's almost... So having hugged someone and feeling that flow of energy that starts from the center of your body and just folds you, and you feel it at the end of your fingertips, tips of your toes, that kind of thing. I'd also say pour a glass of Fanta pineapple and I'd have them listen to it. So I'd say having them hug someone to feel the radiance, and then hearing the sounds of the bubbles. Fun, it's effervescent, it's happy, it's joyous.
Okay, I like that. That's a cool one.
And if you had to describe a color?
So obviously I came up with the question, so I had a little bit more time to think of it, right? So I would do purple. And how I would do it is, I would say, I'm closing my eyes now for effect. I would say, or if I was with a blind person, I would give them a lavender, and I would give them like a velvet or a silk sheet or blanket. and I would tell them to just softly rub their hands on those two things at the same time. I would tell them that the feeling of being almost in a meditative state or in a very relaxed state is the feeling of purple. And I would also then say, if you can imagine luxury as a color, I would say it's purple.
Hey?
What do you think?
Pretty fitting. I felt that. I closed my eyes for a bit and I was like,
damn.
Lavender, almost cashmere is what I was imagining.
Yeah, or pashmina, that kind of, that's soft.
Okay.
That's that soft, you know? Man.
Very well done, man. Very well done.
I could do this.
That's a proper description for someone that's blind.
I think if anyone really feels up to it, although our comment sections haven't been blowing up, but maybe this will be the thing. Maybe someone, if they could give us a shot at, if you want to describe a color, or better yet, if you don't want to comment, rewind, close your eyes when Tev does his description, or if I do mine, and tell us if you feel that we got those colors right. Yeah?
Proper. Get involved. And it's so funny because whilst Tyler was describing that, the software that we use to record our video part of the podcast is actually Lavender. So I got a full account of what the sense of the color is, and then actually visualizing and seeing what.
Hopefully you seeing that purple wasn't like a priming factor. Like, I hope my description worked.
After I'd opened my eyes hearing your description. So,
and you're like, this guy's so good, he changed the software with his description.
Oh, I thought it was blue.
I love it.
That this man possesses. But that's honestly such a sick fact of the day, firstly, and in a description. So, guys, get involved. Let's hear your descriptions of these colors that Tyler's mentioned. And if you can educate us a little bit there on
how you see colors, or how you would describe a color.
Exactly. Oh, one more thing I'll add in for yellow. I'd have them hold a lemon and to move it across their nose and to get that zest. Zest.
Yes.
That also feels zest.
I like that. Yeah, I like that.
And
nice.
In keeping our listeners accountable, it's only right that we also touch on some accountability. As you guys might have known, we generally touch base each episode just to see what we've been up to in the week, what we're proud of, and what we can kind of give ourselves a pat on the back for. This week for me, in the less traditional sense of what I had kind of put out for my accountability, being to learn the software, and I'm still working very hard on animating our logo. It's been quite tough, actually, but slowly getting there. I think by next week I'll be able to share a piece of it with at least my great business partner on the other side there.
Hey.
Possibly new listeners and viewers.
Hold you to that.
This week, I've actually looked to up my game in the kitchen, man. So, yeah, this week, I actually made a curry that was the basis of our own deconstructed, let's call out the remix of a traditional bunny chow.
Okay.
So a bit fun, kind of mixing and matching flavors. So I'd initially started off with almost a stock store-bought curry sauce.
Okay.
That I put in, gave it a taste, and like, okay, it's not really working here. How can we make this feel a bit more authentically urban, so to speak? So I got busy with the spice rack there, did a lot of the taste tests. Thought, okay, balance-wise, something's missing here. Okay, I need a bit more heat, so what can I add there? Okay, let's go for some chopped dry chilies, see how that does to the mix. And it actually ended up tasting and looking pretty good. So
but I have a
pat on the back there.
I have some questions. questions that I need to ask. So,
of course.
you say first when we start deconstructing things, it's you made it. That's what the top chefs are doing. They're deconstructing things. But you say deconstructed bunny chow, and I'm thinking slice of bread with curry on top. Tell me what made it.
So the bread was, I think, like a rye loaf. That was okay. I didn't make the loaf myself. I'll put that out there.
Fair.
But hollowing it out to almost give the feeling of the bunny chow. I actually wish I had taken photos. What I'd do next time I make it. So if I'm in the shop again, I'll take a photo of the bread that was used, and then I'll do a reenactment of the curry that was made.
Okay, so I'm sure there's a lot of people that are thinking rye bread with a bunny chow, but anyway, keen to see it.
It worked out. It worked out. If the listeners want to try it out, I'll do a young recipe.
And I'll be contacting Lisa to ask her. And if I find myself in the UK, you got to be making me this thing.
There we go. We'll put it on the menu.
Fair enough.
So that's my accountability for this week.
I like it.
On your side, I know you've been very productive in regards to your writing and your blog.
So initially I wanted to be posting once a week. Clearly that's not happening. It's actually quite difficult to think of and put together like the blogs that, you could always just churn out content. But anyway, so I haven't been sticking to the once a week thing. But I did today, on day of recording, post my latest blog called Sportswashing or Washing Sports. And I really, really enjoyed writing it. I think it was a lot of fun. So essentially, and I want to have a conversation with you after this. So I'll just break down what the blog is about. We'll put the link in the description if anyone wants to read it. But essentially what the whole blog is about is I just watched Full Swing on Netflix, the golf documentary, which is very good, by the way. I recommend it to anybody who has any interest in sports. It's very, very interesting. But they were talking about this Live golf tournament, right? That is a Saudi-backed tournament where the players get paid very, very large amounts of money to play in this tournament. And essentially that got me thinking about sports washing, right? And I wasn't so familiar with the concept. I know it was thrown around during Qatar, during the World Cup and stuff, but I did some research about it. And so for those people that don't know, sports washing is when a country or an organization with a questionable level of ethics or morality decide to sponsor or back a tournament in an effort to increase their public opinion of themselves. So you do this tournament, and you as a country, so like Saudi Arabia, there's very big questions being asked about human rights, LGBTQ+. All the bad questions that need to be asked are being asked of it as a country. So it becomes sports washing when they create these tournaments to make themselves look good in the public eye. So I wrote about different examples of sports washing, about how sports can unite us. I used the 95 World Cup right in the first paragraph as an example. Gave some older examples of sports washing, and I also gave some suggestions about sports washing as a whole that I thought about. So, Mike, I wanted to just pick your brain a little bit about this. I think a good place to start would be the Live golf tournament. So, do you know much about like the PGA and stuff?
I've got a very broad idea of what it is. I know it's almost like, so if I were to do a comparison between that and tennis. So tennis has the ATP, which is season-long, year-long, where you get various tournaments played under the umbrella of the tournament name. And then you get your majors in between the, what do I call it, the run.
Yes.
For the season. And the PGA Tour are the essentially the body organization that run the tournaments, like the US Masters, I think the Ryder Cup, President's Cup, all of these things in and amongst the various majors.
So they do. That's exactly what they're like. And tennis is probably the best comparison to draw because essentially, but I never realized this until I watched Full Swing, but golfers play a lot of golf. They spend a lot of time traveling and playing golf, right? And we'll talk a little bit about, I think his name's Cameron Johnson, the Australian. I forgot his name, but we'll talk a little bit about him. So essentially what the PGA is exactly like you described it. They are like the body that organizes, like, and you need to play really well to get what you call your PGA card. And once you have your card, you have it for a year, and you can enter, you have to enter a certain amount of tournaments to keep your card. But you can enter as many as you want. But golf, much like tennis, you only get money if you make what they call the cut. So they play Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. They play the same course 4 times. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Yeah, they play 4 times. On Thursday and Friday, after you play, they figure out what the middle mark is. So halfway through, like let's say everyone's who's right in the middle is 3 over par. Yeah. Everyone that's below that doesn't make the cut. So they are out. They don't play on Saturday and Sunday, right? And they also don't get paid at all. Like they get no coverage. Yeah. So they get, I mean, they have their sponsorships and stuff, but they don't get any money from the PGA. And then from that point, it's like 156 in the big tournament. So from, what's half of that? About a 78 up. Yeah. You start getting paid. And based on your placement, determines how much of the pot you get. Every tournament has a different pot amount, right? So obviously when you win one tournament, like you win like $2-3 million. Some of them like the bigger ones are like $8 million. So it's a lot of money on the line. And also golf has like one of the lowest sort of win percentage ratios. Like if you can win 10% of your tournaments, you're considered one of the greatest of all times. So what this live tournament did is they came and they offered a bunch of different players a payment upfront. So just join the tournament and we're going to be paying you bags. And I'm talking like millions. And the big, they offered Tiger Woods apparently like $700 million to come and play in this thing. He's not, but they offered it to him to
play. Never mind what you win at the end.
Your performance doesn't matter. So, that's like, I think where the appeal came in for a lot of them. But how the PGA responded is they said, as soon as you tee off in the live tournament, we are taking away your PGA card. You can no longer play in all there's a few of the bigger tournaments that they can still play in, but like the Ryder Cup, which apparently is very prestigious and they love playing in that. There's a few that you can't play in, right? So my question to you is this. What do you do if you're in this case, right? We've spoken about this so many times, separating the art and the artist, morality doesn't have a place in sport. We spoke about this extensively. So what do you do if you're a golfer? Let's use you as an example. You're a golfer. Yeah. You're a decent player. You've made let's say you've made $1 million so far playing, which is a fair amount of money, but it's not the most amount. I mean, look at us talking about it, but it's not like big. But then these guys come to you and they're like, okay, come join the live tour and we'll pay you 10 mil. Like, just come play. What do you think about this? Like these players getting involved in it, human rights, representing them, because essentially you become an ambassador of the brand. Yeah. So what do you think?
Man, it's always such a tough thing when you consider it from a player and a person's point of view, because like the very interesting thing of what's come out of this and that you've just explained to me is that people don't get paid to attend the tournament. So I always had it in my mind that, cool, Tyler's going to go and play at the British Open. They're giving him $50K as an example to be part of it, because ultimately this is a means for you to not only come and, apply your trade, but you are essentially someone that can market it for them on their behalf. You tell all your friends, guys, watch, I'm going to be playing at the tournament from this day to that day. Here's free promotion essentially for them. So that is a very important factor. And given how many tournaments they play and what quick turnarounds they have for tournaments. So I'd be playing in
weekly.
Arizona this week. Next week I'm playing in Pebble Beach, and then I got to fly to the UK to play in another tournament. And firstly, the consideration that you're away from home for long periods of time. And if I have to fork out all of that money for travel, for accommodation, some people don't have sponsorships for clubs, so I have to fit the bill for all of that. It adds up, man. And maybe I'm wrong in this regard, but quite a few sports people are essentially the breadwinners for their family. So they might have stay-at-home partners, and it's their obligation to go out and make racks. And if you're asking me now, as a scratch golfer turned pro-am that hasn't made the cut to 80% of the tournaments because it's just flooded with so many talented golfers, now I get an opportunity to firstly make money just to appear, and then actually try and go for the big pot at the end. I would consider it 100%.
Yeah.
I think I got to feed my family first and foremost. And I think.
But what about? Yeah.
I question. Does the Live tournament? Is there kind of plans in the works for them to have their own majors, for lack of a better phrase?
I think the idea, it actually looks so sick. When I was doing the research for this tournament, like for this blog piece, they do it like in a very different way. Like it's like essentially like they have their own version of a Ryder Cup, where it's like they've made like a combination of all these big names that are playing on the same team, and like you play teams against each other. So I think they are trying to modernize it. I'm not so sure how, because golf is also a very traditional sport. So I'm not so sure how, like if they'll ever be able to make, because the Masters has so much history behind it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know if they're going to try competing with it in that way. I think they're trying to take a different angle to it, if I can understand it correctly.
Because that's the thing now. It's like the discussions we've had about challenging the order of an established organization, team, etc., whilst giving an opportunity to the newcomers. How is it that I can challenge the likes of a Tiger, a Dustin Johnson, a Tommy Fleetwood, ever, unless I get the necessary resources, as an example? What's my chances of winning the Masters?
But we're ignoring the all that stuff aside. We're talking about that in the sense
of human rights now.
I want to ask, like, do you think that there's an ethical responsibility for these guys to understand who's paying their paycheck, where it comes from?
I think to a degree, but I don't know if it can be as simple as Tyler's playing in the Live tournament. He is certainly an ambassador for.
Well, you do become an ambassador for. You represent because you play for that tournament. You wear their branding. You're part of their message. Similarly,
we can then talk about the teams that went to go and play in Qatar. Every single nation
that was a follow-up question,
to go and play at the World Cup. We could have, from a historical and from an ethical point of view, a nation like England can be like, no, I'm not going to go and play at the tournament. I don't care what that means for us from a football level, but from an ethical point of view, I know where we stand as a nation, and this is what is right. Boom.
Yes.
You do it, but
you
see, you can't be seen as isolated.
It's not as simple as that. It's the same thing. I wrote about it in the piece. I actually wrote about Qatar, but I wrote about like Newcastle. So Newcastle was bought by Mohammed bin Salman, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
And could you then turn around and say to players like whoever, Joe Willock, Kieran Trippier, all those guys, to be like, okay, boycott your club now. Like, you should be, because essentially you are now an ambassador for that. So I do get what you're saying. But I was just wondering, like, I was questioning like where we think if it's different, like, is it different though? That was essentially my question. And like, I know some fans were calling on, like, you know, some of the more radical fans were like, oh, you know, our country should pull out of the World Cup. And then I thought to myself, can you imagine, like, you worked your whole life as a young sportsman, whoever you are, let's say Starboy, Bukayo Saka, you worked and now this is your opportunity. You in not the prime of your career, but some of them are, and you never get the opportunity again. Some of the like older players that get called up later in their career to these World Cups, and that you may never, like, take the Netherlands goalkeeper, for example. He's never going to get a chance to go again. Never. This is it.
Exactly.
This is it, right?
This is
So-
it. This is your one and only shot. So then I guess it's a very complicated
Yeah.
thing. And
Yeah.
what I find very interesting is that a lot of not just sports washing, but when we're talking about human rights, that kind of thing, it's obviously a lot more centered and focused around the Islamic culture these days, which I find to be such a triggering thing. It almost seems like it's one or the other. If that makes sense in my description, they're only sports washing and bad associations with Islamic culture, whereas I think in all companies, especially the bigger brands, you're gonna see really questionable decisions and history in terms of the morality, be it racism, be it prejudice. If we take, I think was it Hugo Boss, who were the clothing partners that actually
For the
made
Nazis.
for the Nazis, and how they managed to rebrand, and people still buy. I don't know if Hugo Boss and Boss are one in the same, but
Yeah.
the fact that you can still essentially rebrand yourself and you still get as much buy-in as if nothing has ever happened. Whereas when you're talking about it from or through the eyes of seeing religion now, then it becomes a different matter. Now it's almost like there's more, what can I say, there's more protest to it. There's more there's more of a spotlight on it that I found. I don't know if maybe I'm overreaching here.
No, I do get what you're saying, but at the same time, I like the protests for me. So there's also something I think about. Like, I don't think the protests are based in religion. It just happens to be that in this case, these countries are violating people's human rights. It's just straight fact. The Saudi Arabia, they killed some German journalist who was exposing. It was quite a breaking news story just before they actually bought Newcastle. It was very, very big. So there's a definite violation. Yeah, there's a very big violation of human rights that are happening, and that's irrespective of religion. And I do get what you're saying, but at the same time, there's also protests against like Russia getting involved in sport now. That's not Islamic. That's also just now you're talking about dictatorships and invasions and stuff. But then one of the things I thought about is like, okay, so instead of holding individuals accountable, what about if we start holding the organizations accountable? So FIFA, for example, should it have been that FIFA should have not accepted the bid from Qatar? So the suggestion that I put in the blog, and now I'm spoiling it, so please go read it now. I've given you so much information. But anyway, go read it. But the suggestion that I put is that we need people, and especially organizations, need to vet and screen the people that are coming into these places, so that are trying to be influential in these sports. So if, for example, the FA, the Football Association, vetted the purchase of Newcastle beforehand, and they said, no, on a morality level, we do not condone the sale and we will not let it happen, right? Because at the end of the day, these Western people are still, the FA is money grabbing just as much as anyone else. They were happy to work with Vladimir Putin, with Roman Abramovich, even though they knew he was in Vladimir Putin's pocket, right? So only when they invaded did they decide, now we got to act up. Only when they're in trouble do they act up. So I'm not saying that the West is squeaky clean. But my idea is what you should do is you should assume guilty until proven innocent for anyone that puts a bid in to start anything. So if you want to host the World Cup, we do a thorough investigation of your human rights track record in your country. If we find questionable things, we come to you. You explain to us what you are doing to better that in your country. And if you can give us that evidence, not that it's perfect. We're not looking for perfection. We're looking for improvement. If you can give us that evidence, then you have the right to put your name in for the hosting. You have a right to buy this club.
Be a part of that.
We hold them accountable, right? You hold the people that are trying to get into it. We're not looking for perfection. We're looking for accountability, right? So that's what I thought. And the same thing with the PGA.
Yeah,
with the PGA, maybe creates a new model with the PGA where you're paying everyone a certain amount, like at least covering their expenses and being at the tournament, not nothing.
Yeah. Give them like flights or something. But I think it's very important, like what you're saying. You need, and I don't know, because now we take into consideration impartiality. And I think an independent authority is what's needed because of these bodies having historically being quite biased to the pre-established big guns, the moguls in their respective industries. Like, if I'm taking football as an example, the reason why there was a lot of outcry from clubs like Newcastle, City, who else have been taken over by, I'll even take consideration of Chelsea, is that you already had your established hierarchy, your Man United, your Arsenals, your Liverpools, etc., who historically had a lot more money. They had a lot more funding, be it sponsors, be it, I don't know, revenue sales, whatever it is that they had going for them that put them in a very lucrative position. And once established as these set golden clubs, they were able to do a lot more in the market, which obviously brought a lot more success, which gives them the ability to constantly outperform everybody.
Yes.
So once we got a sense of what new investors could do, that kind of upset the apple cart.
Yeah.
So from an ethical point of view, I think your approach is pretty spot on in that there needs to be an analysis of each and every club. And I think even with the established clubs or players, they need to be scrutinized as well to say, okay, well, cool. I understand that you have your reputation, you have what you have, but we also need to do a thorough evaluation of the means in which you guys have previously got it and what you're doing now in order to eradicate any discrepancies from an ethical point of view.
Yeah, and I also think like this is also where, and we'll move on after this, I think, because, you know, this was a sick conversation though. But I also think like what some of these associations, like I said, maybe the PGA needs to come up with a new model where, and I'm sure the top golfers, because they had like a golfers convention where they discussed all these things, and I'm sure these guys will all come to an agreement that we can, if you don't make the cut, we cover your expenses for being here, for example. And if you look at like American sports, which is very, very big money, obviously it's crazy big money that's involved in that. But there's certain caps and limitations on the squads that maintain a certain level of fairness within the NBA, right? Like there are dynasties in the Celtics and the Lakers and stuff, but it's very, very not as easy to just throw your money around in that kind of league. And maybe it's something that, again, this is where I think that there's an organizational responsibility for these people to come up, and we have to rethink the model, because what's happening now, because sports washing is, I think it's terrible. I don't think it's right that, you know, people... And it's like, it's different. Even not Roman Abramovich, Todd Bowley coming in and spending money is a little bit different. The way he's probably also done some really questionable things, right? Like just because he's not, I'm not saying he has, but I'm just saying like, if I would feel so much better if I knew that the FA had a very strict set of rigorous like discussions and investigations that go into these purchases. That like if you're buying a club, or again, FIFA we know is so filthy, that, you know, this is also where it comes in, like, are these traditionalist tournaments just trying to hold on to their monopoly of the sport itself and trying to control it, like with the UEFA Super League? I'm not UEFA, just the Super League. I feel strongly that if UEFA was involved in the Super League, we'd be watching the Super League right now. But because they were cut out of it, they're not included in it. It's a really cool conversation. Go check the blog. Let me know what you think. I'm keen to hear your thoughts.
Thorough read through, because you've pointed out quite a lot of good points. I mean, there's so many aspects to take into consideration: the ethical part of it, the financial commitment and obligation of the players, the corporations, the image, what's being done. Should they be found guilty of this? Also, like things like in terms of being reprimanded, what does that look like? Is the fine good enough? I mean, we see a discussion around this for like Man City constantly in the spotlight is something is the punishment for something as bad as ethical violations merely a fine? Does that is that even a drop in the ocean? What kind of tangible change can we see for
sure
crimes and things like this? So,
yeah, for sure. I think
very interesting.
I think we'll circle back to this, especially when City when they find out what happened with them. I think it'll be a good talking point. But yeah, check it out. Check out the blog. And in keeping, Tev and I just had like an old man's discussion. I think that was like a 20-minute discussion, maybe even longer. No worries. We had to do our thing, man. This is what we like to do. So, in keeping in old man discussion, our section today for I Read It First is a question I found on Reddit that I loved. And what sparked this question for me is my students are currently writing exams. And one of my grade 12s, I was standing there, I just handed out the papers and whatever. And one of my grade 12s looked at me and he's like, "You old." And I was like, "What's up, man? Like, that's like, I thought we were good, man." And he's like, "No." He's like, "No, we are good, and I like you a lot, and you're my favorite teacher, but you're old, man." I was like, "Oh, wow, what happened to respect?" And I just took a step back, and I was like, I actually didn't feel so mad about it, And then, funny enough, I was scrolling on Reddit, and I saw a question come up that says, "What old man things do you hate to admit that you enjoy?" I certainly have some that I know.
Tell me more.
So I'll read some of the comments while you think about some of your answers, if you have any. Maybe you see yourself as a young buck. So one, crossing your hands behind your back and walking slowly.
That is very South African. It's both an old man thing and it's a thing that you see a lot of the Tsotsis do. So,
What about turning on sports over the weekend, knowing that you're going to have a nice little nap in front of the TV?
Oh yes. I turn on sometimes I turn on the TV just to have it on. Whether or not I'm watching the program is irrelevant. It's on. It's just a thing because you get so. It's a comfort thing, man. It's like well, it's a weekend. I'll put sport on, have it play, and whatever happens.
Whatever happens. I mean, and that's an old man thing to do.
That is such an old man thing to do. Yeah.
What about having an early shower, eating at like 5 p.m., pajamas on by 6 p.m., in bed by 8 p.m.?
Homebodies, it's become a thing. Like getting comfortable at home, like especially. Yeah, I would consider myself being a really old man. You see, that's like 6 o'clock. Yeah, it's time I start making my way back.
When it hits like, for me, when it hits like 7, Katya and I, we can't watch a movie. It's too late now to start a movie at 7 o'clock. What happened to Mnet Sunday nights, 8 p.m. films?
Nah, and then they kept pushing it back, man. Yeah, we can't stay out that late because in car blast got an extra half hour. Now we're sitting at 8:30 to start. No.
And what about comfortable shoes? Like I'm talking New Balance, but if you want to go to Crocs, kind of, or
man, Skechers is making a comeback. I know it's the in thing here for that memory foam that support the arch. The arch is king. I see a lot of people doing it. And I might hop on that train, man.
I think me too. I think for me, my favorite, and this will be my last one from the thread that I found, my favorite would have to be, they call it dad sounds. So like I grunt when I sit or bend down, or like I audibly sigh, or just a old man noise.
And it feels good, man. The sigh, just like
it does.
You know what? Yeah, and it's a lot of my responses. It can be any time of day. You ask me, what do you want to eat? Actually, I could do with some chicken tonight.
Or when you sit down and you go, ugh.
And the sipping of a hot beverage, I found it so irritating previously when people just. But there's a certain level of satisfaction that you get from drinking a hot beverage. be it morning, night, afternoon, whatever it is. Once you've had that, and it's not just the first sip anymore. It's constantly while you're making your way through this drink that you just get that that sigh. Just adds a little something to that drink. And it's satisfaction. It's real. I find myself asking and telling people that they know nothing about music, because this day and age music just doesn't sound like back in the day. Like, what do you guys know about music? What do you guys know about R&B? What do you know about jazz?
Oh,
When I
wow.
started speaking about jazz, I think that was the tick box for me. It was like, you're old, bro. You're old.
So let me ask you then. You are on the other side, or you on the side of 30. I'm approaching it real fast. Was it a big deal for you? Do you feel like you care, or?
Not so much. Previously, yeah, I thought, I gotta try get my life together by 30, man. But I was already feeling old, man. I think I had it, like I said before, I have
You have an old
really
man's body.
old ailments, exactly. So that kind of assisted me in my journey towards 30. But once turning 30, I don't feel older, like
Okay.
significantly so. I feel good. I feel like I've walked into comfort. Yeah, that's what I'd say 30 is. 30 is a nice, comfortable age where you're comfortable with who you are and your routines and your habits. And you're like,
If 30 was a shoe, it would be a Sketcher.
oh yes, the memory foam there. I need to start getting into that stuff, and like Birkenstocks. Apparently, that's the vibe, man. That's the vibe. That's when you've graduated too.
Well, I'll be like, I'm not so like, maybe I will be closer to the time, but I'm really not so fussed about it. Like, I'm like, it's all right. Still feeling, I want to go gray. I think I look sick if I go gray, but
Ooh, the silver fox.
The silver fox, you know what I'm saying? But I think that was it's just something that I've been thinking about getting older, and how it's not really phasing me, and how maybe it's just different with our generation. Who knows? I was looking at our analytics, and mostly it is around our age that listen to this. Maybe some people are nodding their heads or shaking their heads in agreement. I know 30 by 30 is like a big deal, like the things that you felt. I never had those lists though, so yeah. Well, let's end off with like a wholesome moment to give us some things to aspire to as we grow older.
And one thing that I think is quite evident in our generation, and what I don't see a lot of in this day and age, is kindness, man. Whether it be just greeting your elders, like we had spoken about a little earlier, respect. That respect is something that needs to be worked on by this generation, and I'm thankful that we have found a case of someone that is still showing a lot of respect to his elders. And he's helped someone through an act of kindness. This was an article that I found on Fox 10. The headline reads, Arizona man sells brooms, surprised by TikToker after string of counterfeit buyers. So this goes on to say, a social media sensation known for his once-in-a-lifetime surprises hits the streets of Mesa, I think in the States, and surprised a man who may have been taken advantage of. Sebastian Ibanez is a blind and partially deaf man, so it's really hard for him to find a job. His wife has cancer, so he's trying to provide for her by selling one broom at a time on the street. Because he is blind, he has been handed fake bills in some instances, and his family was evicted at the beginning of this year. His good fortune finally arrived after a brush with TikTok star Jimmy Darts. And Darts read about a blind broom salesman in Mesa, and he created a video and a GoFundMe page that raked in close to $100,000 in a day. Darts, invited his followers to support Ibanez when dozens of people showed up to buy out every one of his brooms that he had on sale. Complete strangers got swept up in the moment, went on to make some donations to the GoFundMe page, and was able to reach an amount of $100,000 to help this man and his family.
Wow. That's
Sure.
really, really cool.
That is really nice. This random acts of kindness is yeah, such a heartwarming thing to see. I mean, it's sickening to think of the people that use counterfeit bills to
Dude, I can't
swindle
imagine
this
that.
man out of, and I think these brooms are like $5.
Yeah,
At a
yeah, and
push.
it's like it looks like those ones that the ladies like selling car parks and stuff in South Africa. You know, like the spaghetti hair mops and stuff.
Yeah.
Shame, man, but it's so sick, man. I love people like this Jimmy Darts guy, and there's obviously Mr. Beast does a lot as well. People can say what they like about. I know he makes racks as well, but I think he does a lot. And there's another guy who I've just seen on he goes around on TikTok as well, and he just gives people like he asks them a question, like a silly question, and like he just gives them money. Like he's like, I love it, man. I love it. We do know the Big Vibe listeners are kind people, so you know that's why we're here all together. You know, and hopefully they'll be kind and drop us a like and a subscribe and all those things as well, if they haven't already. But I'm sure they have. But yeah, no, I think a little bit goes a long way, and I think that's such a nice, sweet way to wrap up this episode.
Oh, this is a wonderful episode. I think it's actually, I feel the warmth of that red,
The yellow,
orange, and the yellow.
the yellow hug,
Of that cashmere lavender blanket.
Beautiful. I love it.
Leave it. Catch you guys again next week.
See you later, guys.
Oh,
Bye bye.